Hey everyone, I just finished the Jupiter Sandspur 7 trials and wow, was this race an experience. I can't wait to get into it, but as a reminder, this is a race recap, so I'll be sharing a whole bunch of course footage and talking you through the race. I have a full race video, but that will be coming in a couple weeks. That's more my traditional video where it's sequential, it's from start to stop, it's got music, it's got real cool visuals, so that's still coming out, but that's gonna be in a few more weeks. I'm gonna start with a quick explanation of the 7 trials because it can be quite a confusing format. This race is comparable to a stage race where we had 7 different races that took place over a 3-day period. However, unlike most stage races, this race took place over the same course. It was a 4.5-mile loop, and the only difference between the days was different directions, different segments, and different portions of it. The first trial was an 18-miler on Friday night, followed by a 50K on Saturday, and then finally 5 separate races that totaled 51 miles on Sunday. On Sunday, each of these 5 races had strict stop and start times, so when you finished one race, you had to wait until the next race to begin. At the end of the 7 trials, the winner was the one that had the lowest total time of all 7 trials once they were added up. Oh, and if you can't tell, the trail is 95% sugar sand, which adds to the difficulty quite a bit. As you can imagine, there was some strategy involved. Which races do I run easy? Which do I run hard? How do I prioritize recovery in between the races, not only the individual races, but each day? I'll explain all that as I walk through the trials, but let's start off with the Waning Gibbous 30K, which was on Friday night. The first trial was 4 loops around the 4.5-mile Sandspur loop, totaling 18 miles. The loop contains several out and backs, which was actually pretty great for seeing the other competitors' positions, and at 7 p.m. Mikey B gave the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we were off. John Parker shot out the gate right away, and that's when I realized this may not be an easy weekend. My initial plan was to run this first race pretty easy, actually really easy, and save all that energy for the 50K the following morning. However, once I saw John take off, I realized that he could put some pretty big time gaps between us, and I changed my strategy so that I would keep him in my sights, but not quite race him as hard as I could, but I still went pretty hard. During the second loop, I actually turned my headlamp off because this course, especially at night, with the chilly air, with the soft sand, it was invigorating and it was quite the experience. This is such a unique course and it looked just as good under moonlight as it did sunlight. There's really not much more to say about this trial. I got it done in under 3 hours and it was a nice introduction to the full course. I'd only ever done the Trident loop before, so being on the full course, seeing some sections I'd never seen, that was exciting, and I was really optimistic about the rest of the weekend. I had a hotel room for Friday night because I didn't want to get done with the race, pack up, drive back, repack, and then drive right back in the morning at 7 a.m. So I went back to the hotel, I relaxed, tried to get some sleep. I got about 3 hours of sleep, and I was ready for that 50K the following morning. The 50K started just like the 30K, with John Parker just shooting out the gate right away. This kid Yanni, he had an amazing start as well, and after a couple loops with him and John ahead, I realized that, man, I may be fighting for 3rd place. I may not even be even close to 1st place. The 50K was 7 loops around the Sandspur course, except now obviously it was during the day, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I ran that 6th loop extra hard because I did not want John Parker to lap me on this course. It's one thing coming behind by, 15, 20, 30 minutes, but getting lapped, that would have been a pretty big ego hit, and I didn't want to give him any more of a boost mentally than he already had time-wise. I finished this 50K in 5 hours and 12 minutes, which is actually my 2nd fastest 50K time ever. And on sand, that's actually pretty impressive, at least in my mind. But this was actually only good enough for 3rd place with all the other trial competitors. My initial strategy was to come out and hit this 50K hard and put some good time between me and the competitors. And honestly, I was happy with the time. I should have been more happy with the time. But after giving such a hard effort and only being in 3rd place overall, it was absolutely disheartening. It wasn't a max effort day, but it was pretty damn close. And it left me feeling very nervous and anxious going into Sunday where we had 51 more miles. Nevertheless, I rested up, I drove back home to Melbourne, which was about an hour and a half away. I figured I'd get a better night's sleep in my own bed, and this was a great idea until my alarm clock went off at 3:30 a.m. the next morning, and I had to make the drive back to Jupiter. I kept having to tell myself that showing up would be the hardest part of the day. Once I got up, drove myself and got there, the hard part's over. All I have to do left is run and finish this race. After I got there and was setting up my tent Sunday morning, I was kind of hoping this pep talk would be true and not a load of bullshit that I was trying to feed myself. The next 3 trials were pretty easy despite their seemingly difficult cutoffs. First up was a nice 2-mile out and back over the biggest climb on the Trident course, We had a 40-minute cutoff for that, and once that was done, I had about 20 minutes to rest up until the next trial. Yanni, who was currently in second place, he took off flying at this trial. He was almost sprinting at some parts that looked like up this sand. And I think the only reason he did that was so that John Parker wouldn't sweep the whole trials. I think he wanted to have at least one victory to his name and, maybe show John that, hey, I'm in this thing to win it too. So he absolutely took off and he came in first in that trial. Next was John, about 30 seconds to a minute behind. And then here was me trailing about the same 30 seconds behind him. My strategy for the 2-miler, I actually stuck to it this time, was to go out, keep those guys in my sight, don't exert myself too much. There's really not much time to be made or broke in 2 miles, so as long as I didn't cramp up or hurt myself, I counted the first trial as a victory no matter when I finished. Next was the 5K, and that was another full traversal of the Trident course, this time starting from a different location, and the results were just the same as all the other trials. John, Yanni, and then myself, all within a few minutes of each other. At this point, I really started to accept that I'd be fighting Yanni for second place, and it wasn't going to be an easy fight because he had some time on me. He is such, if you've ever run with this guy, he always has a smile on his face, so I really couldn't get a good read on if he was tired or hurting. Honestly, he looked like he was having the time of his life, so I was feeling a little nervous from that as well. This feeling of doubt continued into the 10K where, you guessed it, John, Yanni, and then myself. The 10K was great because the sun had just started coming up and I love running in the cold. It was amazing, but these 10, 15, 20-minute breaks between the trials, it was actually pretty cold. The wind was picking up and I found myself freezing and then having to defrost at the beginning of each of the next trials. So now that the sun was coming up, warming up a little bit, I kind of could get into a rhythm and keep warm. At this point, we had 2 trials left, the half marathon and the marathon, and I knew that this is where the race would be won or lost. Sure, this is only 2 trials out of the 7, but these 2 trials made up 41 miles of the 102-mile week, and so we were about to see how we all felt with 61 miles of sand on our legs with 41 miles to go. The half marathon, which was 3 loops on the full Trident course, was where I planned to make my first initial attack for that victory. Right away, as you could probably guess by now, it was John, Yanni, and then myself. And at the start of that second loop, I was kind of trailing close to Yanni, and I was so close where I could actually hear his breathing, and he was breathing pretty heavy. And at that point, I knew this is the moment I need to make my attack. This is the moment where I need to separate myself so that I can get out ahead and make him chase me. And that's just what I did. My goal for this attack was to squeeze ahead of him and maybe get 5 to 10 minutes of a lead during this race. I was really hoping to see John at this point. I hadn't seen him yet, so I was starting to lose hope in that first place victory, but man, second place, I could still do that. Going into that third and final loop, however, I had passed John. He had stopped to get some water, and I was going to stop for a water break myself, but I saw him and went, oh, no way, and just took off and kept running. My main goal for this was to, of course, put some time between me and him and try to make up a little bit of that time he had on me, but I also wanted to show him that, man, I was still in this race. Maybe I can get him to chase me, maybe burn himself out a little bit, and go into that last marathon with some momentum and a drive to win. I knew I was running way harder than I should have. I was really legging it out, but I knew that going into a marathon, I could at least limp to the finish line if I ended up bonking. Going into this race, like I said, I wanted to finish it, but man, I had first place in my sights, and first place is the only place that got the big cool trophy. So in my mind, it was either first place or nothing. I came out here to race, and that's what I was gonna do. I finished trial number 6 in 2 hours and 10 minutes, with John coming in about 4 minutes behind me. So not quite the lead I wanted on him, but I had sent my message and let him know that, hey, I came here to race. Yanni came in about 25 minutes after me, so I knew I had second place pretty well secured. It really was a question of how John and I felt after 74 miles in the sand and what we had left for this final marathon. The half marathon had a 3 hour and 50 minute cutoff, and since I got it done in 2 hours, that meant I had an hour and 50 minutes to rest before the final trial. This included lots of food, lots of drink, and a pretty long nap wearing compression boots. I've never been able to nap more than 5 minutes during any race, even across 4 to 200, so getting 30 to 40 minutes of sleep wearing these compression boots, it felt pretty amazing, and I got up feeling a little tight, but man, ready to go and ready to hit that last marathon. At this point, I was pretty impressed with how my body was holding up. I had 74 miles on the sand underneath my legs at this point, and yeah, I was tight, I was sore, ankles hurting a little bit, hips a little out of whack, but I was feeling good going to this last marathon, and I wasn't sure if I could pull out a victory, but damn, I knew I was gonna give him a run for his money. The start of Trial 7 was pretty exciting. We were all happy. We were gonna be done with this damn thing. All that was left between us and a finish was 6 miles on the Sandspur loop, this time in the opposite direction. With Mikey B giving his final 3, 2, 1 go, it was John Knight who took off with the other runners falling back. I was now getting more and more confident in second place, but not overly confident because Yanni, he may have just been conserving energy, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few laps later he just came flying by me. So I had some confidence, but I wasn't counting my chickens before they hatched. I'm gonna skip over a lot here because this video is long enough, and honestly, the first couple loops, it was just spent in the pain cave. I was just knocking out miles, just trying to get to that finish line, trying to keep John in my sights. As I hit the halfway point, starting loop 4, I passed John sitting in a chair. Mikey B came up to me. He asked, hey, do you have any stomach medicine? I said, no, I don't have any on me, and kept going. And at that point, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, oh man, he might not be feeling well. I still had 40 minutes to make up on him, but if his stomach was hurting and we had another 13 miles to go, shit, might as well make my attack and see what I can do. I was concerned for John. I wanted to see him finish, but in these ultra marathons, that's a huge part of it. Taking care of your body, taking care of your bowel issues, all that is part of the race. So I wasn't gonna stop, wait. I'm taking off, I'm trying to get this win. And I was feeling pretty pumped up too, right until I hit one of the out and backs and I saw John. He had gotten up, he had started running. I was happy for him that he was finishing out this race, but wished he was more than 10 or 15 minutes behind me. I said, hey, what the hell? We still have another 10 miles to go. Let's see if I can do this. But seeing that he was only about 10 to 15 minutes behind me with 10 miles to go, the thought of widening that gap to 40 minutes, it was starting to seem less and less likely. Long story short, with John still hot on my tail, I went to the final loop of the Trident course, final 4.5 miles, and I consider this my victory lap. I was celebrating my win for the marathon, my win for this trial. The wins in the individual trials, they don't mean anything besides bragging rights, but it still felt good knowing that I went into the 7 trials and finished the last 2 trials coming in first, ultimately getting a 2nd place victory overall. So this was a victory lap just to celebrate, my personal accomplishments over this whole weekend. I finished the race with a smile on my face, accepted my buckle, and waited for John to come in so I could congratulate him on his 1st place victory. So 2nd place, it's great, but I was going for 1st place. So then why do I seem so happy? I went into these trials thinking it would be a pretty easy victory. Push hard in the 50K, maybe the marathon, but knock some miles out, coast to a victory, bring home a big, awesome trophy. This is called complacency, and it is an extremely dangerous feeling to have. I have a backyard ultra in 6 weeks, Death at Dupuis, and I need to go into that race at my physical and mental best if I want to get a victory. What the 7 trials showed me, that no matter what your training, what your accolades, what your mindset, there's always going to be someone out there bigger, badder, and better than you that's going to come for that 1st place victory. Don't go into these races thinking you're king shit, because you're going to get humbled. But that's only a surface level lesson. What I really got out of this race was that it showed me that my competition could push me further than I ever thought possible. My goal time for the 7 trials with all the races that I thought I was physically capable of doing was 18.5 hours, and I ended up finishing in 16 hours and 15 minutes. My final 3 half marathon splits were all under 2 hours and 15 minutes, which given the sandy course is absolutely insane. I'd much rather come in 2nd place to a better runner who pushed me to do my best rather than sandbag a race and get an easy victory. I went into this race wanting an accolade and motivation to boost my ego going into my backyard ultra, and I got everything I wanted and way more. After the race, I think the only person more excited than the runners was the race director, Mikey B. 9 out of 10 of the runners that started the trials all showed up on this Sunday on this final day, and all 9 of us finished the race. This was a 90% finisher rate for a race that usually has a 40 or 50% finishing rate, and granted the weather was much cooler this year, but it was still awesome for Mikey B to see 90% of the runners who started these trials leg it out and finish. It was amazing. Doug, Judy, Laura, all the other awesome runners. Man, we all went out there, we all had a good time, and we all showed ourselves that we were made of more than we thought we were. This was actually supposed to be the final year of Mikey B holding the 7 trials due to the low sign-up rate, but I could tell talking to him immediately following the race that this was not going to be the final year. There was going to be a 2024 version, and lo and behold, go check it out now. He already posted it. You can sign up for it right now. This race, it was a race where you need to dig deep and find out who you really are. Not only that, but use your brain to come up with a pacing plan for the trials, come up with a recovery plan, show up each morning. That's the real battle is the planning. The physical effort is one part of it, but the planning, the execution, that is a whole nother beast, and that's what makes these trials so much fun. If you can make the time, I highly encourage anyone watching this to come out for the 2024 7 trials. It will be an incredible time. Get a hotel, make a long weekend of it. Jupiter, Florida, it's an amazing vacation area. Bring your family, they can go have fun while you're getting your ass kicked on the Jupiter Sandspur course. I hope you enjoyed this race recap and all the footage. I look forward to making these videos before, during, and after the race, so it was my pleasure to bring this to you, and I really can't wait to bring you the full race video. If you've seen my other videos, you know these videos, they're pretty cool. I mix the race, I mix the music, transitions. I try to make them better and better each time, and I really like my Tampa Bay 100 video. I'm gonna try to keep that sort of quality going into my future videos. Hopefully I can do that. Hopefully I can capture more of that lightning in a bottle and bring you a really amazing Sandspur race. That way, if this video did encourage you to sign up, that one definitely should. Again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get out there and do something amazing.